falling in love with someone else after marriage. Karen Matthews. Here's a name I'll try to forget for the rest of my life. I'm Roger Turner, and I was married to Karen for 20 years. Like most ignorant husbands, I thought we had a good marriage until I discovered otherwise. Karen and I were two working-class kids from a municipal district. We went to the same school, although we had different groups of friends. We knew each other but didn't start dating until a few years after graduation. At the time, Karen was working as a legal secretary, and I had just started my own business. My business was websites, specifically design and hosting. The two comparison sites I designed, one for insurance and one for checking prices, were a big profit. When Karen and I got married, I was already worth a lot of money, and to protect my business, my lawyer suggested a prenuptial agreement. It stated that if the marriage broke up for any reason, Karen would receive a percentage of my personal fortune, and thinking we would be together for life, I happily signed it. Karen signed it knowing that no matter what happened, she would be rich. Although our careers were different, one thing we were good at was bed. Karen was like an insatiable beast. Throughout our marriage, Karen made love to me to death 4 times a week, no less. Our oldest son was born 19 months after we were married, and 4 years later, twins were born. I was now the father of 3 boys. The only thing we disagreed on was names. Karen, for some reason, wanted to use names that had biblical overtones. Since we weren't religious, I didn't see the point. We settled on the name Robert for the oldest child, and 4 years later, the twins were named Ethan and Luke. Even though we both worked, we always found time on the weekends to spend together as a family. We had a nice family home in a nice neighborhood. Most of our neighbors were businessmen and a few minor celebrities. We were constantly invited to parties or business events, but we often declined invitations to spend time with our kids. My business had grown to the point where I now had 40 employees. Don Healy was my CEO and second in command. The rest of the employees were either technicians or finance people. As any employer knows, good employees are hard to find these days, even harder to retain. For this reason, I was always looking for incentives to retain my employees. Every year on their birthday, I gave them a day off with pay, plus paid lunch for the employee and their spouse or partner. I decided to offer all employees a private health care package, the advantage of which was that they could get urgent treatment rather than having to queue up at the NHS, England's National Health Service. As the package included immediate family members, most staff appreciated the gesture. Part of the medical package was a health check every 2 years. I was a month away from my 45th birthday when I received an invitation for a health check. Thinking I would set a good example for my employees, I accepted. The doctor asked me a few questions about my lifestyle. Did I smoke? Did I drink? The usual questions one would expect. He did all the usual checks such as measuring height, weight, and blood pressure. To complete the tests, I was asked to take blood and urine tests. The doctor explained that they would run the tests, and if there were any problems, I would be contacted. I went back to work knowing that I looked healthy and trim. In the evening, Karen and I talked about Robert's upcoming 18th birthday party. We decided to throw a party for him, and after some thought, we settled on a venue. We both said we didn't want drunk 18-year-olds walking around our house. 2 days before the party, I received news that turned my life upside down. The doctor wanted to talk to me about my test results. "Is this bad news, Doc?" I asked, sitting down where the doctor pointed. "It's not life-threatening, Mr. Turner. The problem is that you appear to have hemochromatosis. Since you lead a relatively healthy lifestyle, you have no obvious symptoms. With some medication, we can help control the disease." "Any idea how I got infected?" I asked. "I'm afraid it's a hereditary disease, Mr. Turner. The symptoms are different in every known case. Some men suffer from chronic internal pain. Others live without pain, but are infertile. You fall into the latter group. Heredity. I'd better check my sons." "Doc, did you just say I'm infertile?" "Yes, Mr. Turner. Your test results show you're sterile, And based on our experience, I'd say you've always been sterile. I could tell by the look on his face what he was thinking. The doctor told me about the medications he had prescribed. Fortunately, he gave me some pamphlets to read, but I was still overwhelmed, so I didn't hear much of what he was telling me. I had planned to be back in the office before the end of the day, but instead I headed home. While Karen was at work and the boys were at school, I had time to think. After I stopped feeling sorry for myself, I signed the boys up for emergency testing. If they weren't my sons, I wanted answers from my wife. During dinner that night, I explained what I had learned today, and the boys were fine with being tested. Karen wasn't as enthusiastic, and given that the boys' health was the primary concern, I couldn't understand her position. Regardless of how Karen felt, 2 days after the party, I took the boys to get tested. It was an agonizing few days waiting for the results. When I received the results, my emotions were mixed. "Please sit down, Mr. Turner." The doctor pointed to a chair. "What's wrong with me?" I asked, knowing that everything was clear with the boys. "We found it strange that after extensive tests, none of your sons showed any signs of hemochromatosis. Since we still had your samples, I asked the lab to run a DNA test. I hope you don't mind. I saw your concern at our last meeting." I looked at the doctor, knowing this was going to be bad news. "I'm afraid the tests have shown that you are not the biological father of your sons." I jumped up claiming the test results were wrong. The doctor let me rant for a few minutes before I calmed down and sat down again. "Do all the boys have the same father?" I asked. "Yes. The tests confirmed that the father of all 3 boys was the same man. Since you didn't know about your condition, I assume your wife didn't know either." My wife didn't know, and she still doesn't know the whole story. I told her about my health problems, but I didn't mention that I was infertile. I clung to the hope that the boys would be mine. "I'm sorry, Mr. Turner." I nodded my head. "Could you give me a printed copy of the DNA results? I have a feeling I'm going to need them very soon." I thanked the doctor and left. Normally, I might have considered going home, but today I decided to go back to the office. As soon as I entered the office, Don realized something was wrong. He followed me into my office and closed the door. "What's wrong, Roger? You look like death." "I have some bad news, Don." I sat down and explained everything to Don. "Jesus Christ, Roger. What are you going to do about it?" Don asked. "As I see it, I have 2 choices. I can say nothing and continue to play the stupid, ignorant husband, or I can confront Karen. The latter will probably lead to a divorce," I replied. 20 years. 20 damn years I'd been living a lie. All that time I thought the boys were mine. "Calm down, Roger. I'm sure there's an explanation." "Oh, I'm sure there is, Don. Maybe Karen can explain it to me tonight. I'll leave you in charge for a few days. I've got a mess to sort out." "I'm sorry, Roger. Take as much as you need. I'll contact you if something comes up that I can't handle." Don went back to his office, and I sat there wondering how to sort out this mess. Mentally, I worked out that Karen would get about £2 million if we divorced. Considering I was worth 10 times that, I could afford it. I called my solicitor for advice. As he mainly dealt with corporate clients, he recommended Arthur Crenshaw. Arthur Crenshaw was an old-school lawyer. He knew his way around the legal system. I told him about the prenup we had. "Are you sure this is what you want to do, Mr. Turner?" "Yes. There's nothing my wife can tell me to make it right. Can I pick up the papers when they're ready?" "Of course. I'm in court tomorrow, and my secretary Marion will bring them to you." I thanked Arthur and left. I drove around the neighborhood until it was time to go home. When I entered the house, the twins were watching TV and Karen was cooking dinner. "Where's Robert?" I asked. "He stayed with some friends for the night. We're having dinner tonight, the 4 of us." Karen smiled. I wondered if she would smile later after our little chat. After dinner, the twins retired to their rooms. After loading the dishwasher, I joined Karen in the living room. "I had an interesting conversation with the doctor." "You did? About what?" Karen answered calmly. It was about the fact that the boys showed no signs of the hereditary disease that I have. After running all the tests, they found nothing, which is apparently very unusual. They solved the mystery when the doctor ran a DNA test. The boy's DNA doesn't match mine, and I wondered if you could explain? Karen sat silent and looked at me for a minute. I have nothing to say. The boys are not yours. I fell in love with another shortly after we were married. My love was so strong that I wanted his children. When you and I were trying to have a child, I used a diaphragm until I made love to him, Karen replied, almost without emotion. If you fell in love with someone else, why didn't you divorce me and play happy family with him? Because he was already married and had children. Now that we know you're infertile, it seems like I made the right decision. If it weren't for that, we would never have become parents. I can't believe I'm hearing this. You got pregnant by another man because you fell in love with him. That means we've been living a lie for 20 years. I still love you, Roger. I just loved the other man more. I see. Or you wouldn't have given him children. I'm going away for a while. I can't be around you right now. Tonight I'll sleep in the spare room. Leaving the house, I rushed away. After a few drinks at the pub, I got home. Karen was sitting watching TV. I ignored her and went to the spare room. I pretended to be asleep when about 30 minutes later, she knocked on the door. In the morning, I showered, got dressed, and left the house without saying a word. A short time later, Karen texted me, "Are you okay?" "What do you think?" I replied. Karen didn't reply. I met with Dawn, then spent the morning looking for a house to buy. Later that afternoon, I picked up the divorce papers. When I pulled up to the house, Karen was alone. She smiled as I entered the house. "Where are the boys?" I asked sharply. "Robert is out walking again and the twins are with my parents. Since we need to talk, I thought it would be best if the boys weren't here. I'm glad you assumed I was coming home. Really, I'm not sure what you think we should talk about. I'll go up the stairs and change my clothes, and while I'm doing that, you can take a look at this." Tossing the envelope on the kitchen table, I left. Karen stood with her arms folded and a defiant expression on her face when I returned to the kitchen. "Really, Roger? A divorce?" "Yes, Karen, divorce. Last night you told me you loved another man more than you loved me. You loved him so much you even had his children. But I still love you, Roger. Yeah, sure, but not enough to have my children. The fact that I'm infertile doesn't change anything. If we had known then, we could have adopted. You left and got that asshole pregnant, leaving me with no say in the matter. For all I know, you're still making love to him. Divorce is the only way out for me, Karen. As you can see, I've been fair. You'll get £2 million, according to the prenup." When I mentioned that Karen was still sleeping with him, she looked at the floor and that told me all I needed to know. "This is my house, Karen, which means you have to move out. Find a place and I'll pay for it. We'll deduct that from your £2 million. In the meantime, I'll stay in a hotel." "What about the alimony?" Karen practically screamed. "Since Robert's over 18, it doesn't matter. If you want child support for the twins, ask their father, whoever he is." "You're making a big mistake, Roger. You're listed as the boy's father, so you should be paying for them." "I made a mistake when I married you, Karen. Just out of interest, who's the boy's father?" "I won't tell you. It won't make any difference. You're going to get a divorce anyway." Then I went back upstairs to gather my clothes. I was going to stay in a hotel for a few nights until I got some things settled. Karen sat at the table and cried as I carried the suitcases downstairs. "I'll be back for my stuff in a day or two. I'll have enough for a few days," I said without waiting for an answer. I found an apartment I could rent for 2 months, hoping that was all I would need it for. It also gave Karen a chance to find a place to live. Karen called me several times asking me to change my mind, but after the last call, which was very stressful, she gave up. My attorney said she signed and returned the divorce papers. I gave her a month to vacate the house. Robert called to let me know he was unhappy with his mother. He asked if he could move in with me when I found a place. I told Robert that in that case, on the contrary, his mother would move out of the house. When I called to talk to Ethan and Luke, I was told they didn't want to talk to me. I heard Luke yelling that he hated me. One night, Robert and I were talking when he got a call from Karen. He put her on speakerphone. "Yeah, what do you want?" Robert said sharply. "Robert, don't talk to me like that. I'm your mother. Show me some respect." Respect? This is ridiculous. Robert stopped and stared at the phone. "You brought this on yourself. You ruined this family. I want nothing to do with you or my donor, who you call my father. Stay away from me and don't call me again. You are nothing more than an evil witch." Robert pressed the button to end the call. "You should try to maintain some sort of relationship with your mother," I advised. "She can go away, Dad. I don't want anything to do with her. I hope the twins realize what an evil person she is and leave when they're old enough." Karen found a house for herself and the twins. She left a room for Robert. Not that he was going to use it. I was there the day she moved out. "Take the bed, Karen. I'll buy a new one." "We've never done anything to the house." "I don't believe a word you say, so take the bed." The twins ignored me the whole time we were in the house. They didn't look back when Karen was leaving. Thanks to my wealth and status as an average kid who did well, the newspapers followed the story of the divorce. Public opinion was on my side. Most people thought Karen had treated me badly. After 5 months, the divorce was final. Unfortunately, I had to pay child support for the twins. "Roger, it's Arthur. Just calling to let you know that you are a single man. The divorce became final today." "Thank you, Arthur. I have a few questions for you. Can I appeal the child support claim, and can I get my name removed from the boys' birth certificates?" "You can appeal the child support claim, although it may take some time. The real father will have to take a paternity test before anything happens. He will probably try to avoid the test at all costs. There's another way. It will cost a little more, but the result will come quicker." "And what is the alternative way?" I asked. "You could sue your ex-wife for parental fraud. This would mean that you would be struck from the birth certificate, and you could demand back all the child support you paid after the divorce. If I subpoena her, I will ask her to name the father. She cannot refuse to answer if she is under oath. That way you can sue him for past due child support." "Go ahead, Arthur. Prepare the papers and file them, please." "Will do, Roger. I'll let you know when Karen gets them." 3 days later, I got word that Karen had been served with the parental rights fraud papers. I was expecting a call from Karen. Her silence bothered me somewhat. Arthur called me and told me that Karen's attorney wanted to set up a meeting. I told him to let them know I wasn't interested, and we would see each other in court. On the day of the hearing, I sat with Arthur. Karen sat with her attorney. She had a concerned look on her face. I assumed her attorney was someone from the law firm where she worked. The hearing began with me explaining why I was suing Karen. I was asked questions by Karen's attorney as well as Arthur. After lunch, Karen was confronted by the attorneys. Her attorney was gentler with her. Arthur was not as lenient. "Ms. Matthews, your ex-husband is suing you for parental rights fraud. At a recent divorce hearing, you admitted that my client is not the father of your 3 sons. My client wants his name removed from the birth certificates and replaced with the name of the biological father. Can you please tell us who the real father is?" Karen sat silent, staring at the floor. "I can't. It would destroy his family and ruin his life," Karen replied. "Just like you ruined mine," I thought to myself. The judge's voice brought me back to reality. "Ms. Matthews, may I remind you that you are under oath? Please answer the question." Karen sat staring straight ahead of me. She answered in a low voice, almost a whisper. "Speak up, Ms. Matthews," the judge admonished Karen. "Lawrence Rosenthal," Karen replied, and then stared at the floor again. The young woman stood behind me and walked out of the court. Arthur turned to the judge. "Your Honor, Miss Matthews has named the biological father of her children. All my client wants is to remove his name from the birth certificates." Arthur came back and sat down next to me. The judge looked down at some papers. I decided that Ms. Matthews had tricked her ex-husband into believing he was the father of 3 children, even though he clearly wasn't. Ms. Matthews, I sentence you to 6 months in prison, suspended for 2 years. If you appear in court for any offense, those 6 months will be added to any sentence imposed. Do you understand? Karen answered in the affirmative. Turning to me, the judge pronounced, Mr. Turner, by court order, your name will be removed from the birth certificates of Ms. Matthews's children. Since it has been proven that you are not the father, I am releasing you from any financial obligation for child support. Thank you, Your Honor, I replied. We stood as the judge left the courtroom. Arthur gathered his papers, and we walked out of the court. Karen approached us in the foyer. I hope you're satisfied, Roger. You probably ruined a man's life, not to mention ruined his marriage. With your money, you could afford a few more years of alimony. If you'll excuse me, I need to talk to Larry and tell him what happened. I hope I never see you or talk to you again, Roger. Arthur spoke up. Miss Matthews, I don't know what you are going to say to Mr. Rosenthal. I think it's only fair to warn you that 10 minutes ago he was served with child support papers. Good day. Arthur and I left, leaving Karen crying. How did you manage to serve Rosenthal so quickly? I asked Arthur. Marion had the paperwork ready. All we needed was his name. When Karen said who it was, my assistant left the court to call Marion. She printed out the papers and handed them to the waiting bailiff. Mr. Rosenthal was notified before the hearing was even over. Arthur smiled. The attorney told me that Rosenthal fainted when he opened the envelope. He was taken away in an ambulance when Karen entered the office. As with my divorce, the papers were all in. Larry Rosenthal became a celebrity when the newspapers hit the stores the next day. It was through the media that I learned what had happened. When the senior partners found out what caused Rosenthal's downfall, they compounded his woes and fired him. His relationship with Karen was against company policy. Karen was also fired. My case against Rosenthal was derailed. His wife cleared him in a messy divorce. The court made a note in his personal file that he owed me $450,000, but I didn't expect to see a cent of it. Money wasn't an issue for me. I just wanted to ruin his life as he had ruined mine. True to her word, Karen hasn't spoken to me since that day in court. Larry moved in with Karen when his wife kicked him out, and as far as I know, they are still together. Robert lives with me. He still refuses to acknowledge his mother and biological father. Right now, I divide my time between business and friends. I have a few girlfriends with benefits, but none of them are serious, as I have no intention of remarrying. 20 years of living a lie has been more than enough for me. The end.